What is going on, guys? Before we get into the video, I quickly want to tell you that I am giving away a free entry into the Drafters NHL Best Ball Playoffs Championship. It's $11 USD to enter one of these drafts, and all you have to do to enter this contest to potentially win a free entry is comment below your Drafters username. I'm going to pick one random person who comments their Drafters username and give them a free entry to this tournament. I made a video about it about 2 weeks ago that covers everything that you need to know. It's a best ball style tournament covering the Stanley Cup playoffs, $25,000 in prizes, $5,000 to the best overall team. It's so much fun, guys. I've done 20 of these drafts so far. I'm pretty addicted. And yeah, make sure you guys, if you want to do any of these drafts or even just pick'ems on Drafters, you can do pick'ems on the NHL, NBA, and more. Make sure you use my promo code / referral code FIREDUP for a 100% match deposit up to $100. It's the best promo on there currently, so if you're going to sign up and do these drafts, you might as well use that code. All right, now what you clicked on this video for, today we are going over my favorite breakout predictions for the 2024-2025 NHL season. We have 15 players on this list, forwards and defensemen. I'm extremely high on a lot of these players. I think they have a lot of potential for not only next season, but for many years to come. So I'm super excited to share with you the research that I've done on these players and what I think they can do. Now, before I talk about these players, I want to give you guys the conditions that I've made for a player to be considered a breakout candidate. We have two conditions here. One, they must be under 25 years old, and two, they must have 50 points or less in the 2023-2024 NHL season. For this video, I'm only talking about 15 players, but for future videos, when we get to August, September, October, I'm going to be talking about some deeper breakouts and also some players that potentially could put up 90 points. A player like Wyatt Johnston, obviously, he doesn't make it as a breakout candidate for this video because he put up more than 50 points. But I'm going to be talking about those type of players in future videos. For now, these players meet these conditions. The first breakout candidate I want to talk about is defenseman Olen Zellweger of the Anaheim Ducks. This guy is an offensive beast, and I think there's a lot of things to like about his game. In terms of his AHL totals, they were extremely impressive. He had the second best points per game in the AHL amongst defensemen, only behind Brandt Clark, who's also in this video. But yeah, basically with Zellweger, very impressive AHL totals, 37 points in 44 games. And we've also seen him play a handful of games in the NHL this season on the Ducks. He's played 25 games and he's put up 9 points. I would say this production is pretty solid considering he doesn't have the most minutes, 19 minutes and 16 seconds of ice time per game. His power play time hasn't been that great either, 13th on the team, that being 1 minute and 49 seconds of power play time per game. Really what it comes down to is if they are going to give Zellweger good minutes. There is one concern I have with him, and it's the fact that he's a 5'9" defenseman. This is very rare in the NHL, guys. There's some comparables, Torrey Krug, he's had good offensive production. He's a 5'9" defenseman. Jared Spurgeon comes to mind, but there's really not a lot of elite level defensemen that are that short. So that is something to look at historically, and that's why I do have some concerns if, they are going to trust him with heavy minutes. On the flip side, the game is changing. I do think there's a lot of opportunity on the Ducks, so his minutes will go up next season, but his breakout potential really comes down to his power play deployment. He is an offensive guy. He is great on the power play, so there is a good chance that he ends up on the first line power play next season. And if he can get significant power play time, I think there's a good chance he hits 30 to 40 points next year. Overall, I think we're going to see a full season out of Zellweger. We're going to see his minutes go up. We're going to potentially see him on the first line power play, quarterbacking that power play, and we're going to see the Ducks improve as a team. So with all that combined, I think Zellweger is a great breakout candidate. Next up, we have Pavel Mintyukov of the Anaheim Ducks, another Ducks defenseman. Obviously, I have Mintyukov rated a little bit higher than Zellweger, and let me tell you why. I think the main reason that I'm a big fan of Mintyukov is his production. He was a pleasant surprise this year, especially earlier on when he was racking up a lot of points. He went through a cold spell, and then he got injured as well, so he cooled down. But at the start of the year, if you guys remember, this guy was looked at as a huge surprise. So yeah, big fan of Mintyukov in terms of his production. And let's talk about his production a bit here, guys. 63 games as a rookie, he put up 28 points. For a defenseman, that is pretty legit, especially considering he plays on the Anaheim Ducks. And also, what's even more impressive about these numbers is that he was averaging 18 minutes and 50 seconds of ice time per game this season. This is elite numbers, guys. The top NHL defensemen, they have 24 to 25 minutes of ice time per game. Just imagine if Mintyukov was getting those type of minutes in the NHL. I mean, what type of production could we see from a player that is producing at this level? Again, I don't want to get too hyped because, 63 games is not the biggest sample size. It's only one season, but very impressive production. And also, we actually saw some flashes of brilliance from him in terms of power play usage. Fowler, they kind of alternated between him and Flower on the first line power play, but I watched a couple of Ducks games and he looked pretty poised on the first line power play. I don't know what they're going to do, but again, with him and Zellweger, it's going to come down to who runs that first unit. Regardless of the power play situation and what happens with that, I will say, regardless, Mintyukov is expected to get more ice time this upcoming season. And he's also a guy that puts up really good peripherals. So, if you're looking at his shots, hits, and blocks, they were pretty solid this year. You can see him put up, 120 shots, 120 hits, 80 blocks. This is very solid if your league values those peripherals. So, that is something to consider. And also his production, right? If he can put up 28 points in 63 games, which puts him on pace for 36 points in a full season, despite only averaging 18 minutes and 50 seconds of ice time per game, what happens when you give him 23 to 24 minutes a game? I don't know. I guess we'll have to see next season. Next up, we have Brandt Clarke of the Los Angeles Kings. This guy is an offensive weapon, and I think if he was on a different team where he could get more opportunity, we would be having a very different conversation about this man right now. We would be talking about Calder Trophy. We would be talking about the next Makar. And I think a lot of us are still talking about that, but unfortunately, he just hasn't been able to get that opportunity on the Kings so far. If we're breaking down Brandt Clarke here, he was drafted 6th overall in the 2021 NHL entry draft, so high draft capital, which is always a good thing. He's 6'2", so he has good size. And he is obviously an extremely talented offensive defenseman. I mean, if you're looking at his numbers in the OHL, very impressive. And in the AHL this season, he led all AHL defensemen in points per game. He put up 42 points in 47 games. And in my opinion, he is going to be NHL ready this upcoming season. We saw him get called up and he played 16 games with the Kings, putting up 6 points. And yeah, these numbers aren't, eye-popping or incredible, but guys, look at his ice time per game in the 16 games that he played with the Kings this season. 13 minutes of ice time per game. This type of production with 13 minutes is extremely impressive. Like I said earlier, we would be having a different conversation if he was on a team that, he could get top minutes on, that he could be on the first line power play. But with the Kings, right, they are a very successful team, at least in the regular season. They have a lot of pieces and a lot of mouths to feed. So that has been an issue. I think next year, he's going to grow a little bit more. And I think he's going to be with the Kings full time. And the question is, what type of deployment is he going to get? Basically, I'm hoping for top 4 minutes here, 20 to 21 minutes. I would hope for more, but I'm not expecting that. The big thing that is really going to catapult Brandt Clarke to being a very legit breakout candidate for next season in fantasy is his power play deployment. So, Drew Doughty, he's been quarterbacking that first line power play for a while now. I know he's getting old, but Doughty actually played really well this last season. I was very impressed with his performance. If you're looking at his fantasy totals, his power play points. So I'm not sure what they're going to do, but I would expect a guy like Brandt Clarke, who's probably a faster skater. He's younger. He's more agile. I think he would be great on the first line power play. I just don't know what the Kings are going to decide. And we'll just have to, follow the developments through training camp next season and see where it goes. The number 1 defenseman on this list is none other than Lane Hutson of the Montreal Canadiens. If you guys are Canadiens fans or you follow hockey, you have probably heard about Lane Hutson. This guy, he was drafted in the 2nd round and is considered one of the best steals in recent memory. The reason he fell so far in drafts is because he was 5'8" at the time he was drafted. He actually put on 2 inches since then. He's listed as 5'10" now, which is huge because obviously he slipped because of his height. If it wasn't for his height, he would have been a first-round pick, guys. This guy's put up elite college numbers. And let me tell you about these numbers and how impressive they are. During his time in college at Boston University, Lane Hutson has averaged 1.26 points per game. And in terms of defensemen, no defenseman has done this since the 90s. Let's compare his numbers to some known NHL defensemen, guys. Adam Fox, his number was 1.20. Luke Hughes, 1.09. Cale Makar, 0.93. And Quinn Hughes, 0.90. Lane Hutson has better college numbers than all of these elite stud defensemen. And listen, guys, I understand it's college. It's a different ball game when you get to the NHL, but still, we like to follow trends here. And historically, this is very impressive. And I think it points to Lane Hutson being a potential superstar in the making. Now, just this week, Lane Hutson signed with the Montreal Canadiens a 3-year entry-level contract. And we saw him play in 2 games. In both of these games, he put up an assist. So 2 points in 2 games. I know it's a small sample size, but watching those games, he looked very good out there. Now, the big thing, like I said, with these other defensemen is power play deployment. His production and whether he can truly break out in fantasy is going to be determined by his power play deployment. And obviously the big elephant in the room is Mike Matheson. You guys know, if you watch my videos, I was so high on Mike Matheson this season, and he ended up performing incredibly. I think he put up 62 points. He was great on the power play. You know, the Canadiens didn't have the best power play in the NHL, but it was okay. And I mean, Matheson just looked really good on there. So, you know, it's going to be hard to take him off that first line power play. I'm not sure what the Canadiens want to do. I think if you want to, you know, build Lane Hutson, you put him on the first line power play. If you want to, you know, potentially have this guy be your #1 defenseman in the future, you want to get him on there and get those reps. So I think they're going to do that, but that might require trading Mike Matheson or maybe just taking him to the second unit. I'm not sure. We'll see what happens, and I'll obviously, when I make my breakout videos next season, it's going to be more updated because we'll know what the Canadiens decide to do with their defensemen. They have a lot of defensemen that they need to deal with. They might have to make a couple of trades, so something to keep an eye out for. If he gets on the first line power play, to the moon, guys. To the moon. I'm telling you, Caulfield, Suzuki, Slavkovsky, Hudson on that first line power play with Kirby Dach probably. That is going to be a legit power play. And I think Hudson, if he gets that opportunity and he gets decent minutes, this guy could put up 50+ points next year. The first breakout forward I want to talk about is Cutter Gauthier of the Anaheim Ducks. Now, a lot of people dislike this guy. I understand the Flyers drama, him requesting a trade, not wanting to play for the Flyers, having not played a single NHL game. And there's a clip the other night about, you know, him saying that the other team was going to have a lot of tears, and then they lost. I think they got shut out. But yeah, there's a lot to dislike potentially about this guy. I don't know him, but listen, I don't care about any of that stuff. What I want to talk about is the fact that he scored 38 goals in a college season. That has not been done since the year 2000. These numbers are legit, guys. 38 goals in 41 games. And there's a lot of things to like about Gauthier. I mean, 6'2", 20 years old, but he was born in January, so he's going to be 21 next season. You know, high drafted guy, 5th overall in the 2022 NHL entry draft. And he's going to a team where he's going to get all the opportunity in the world. The Ducks are going to be a wagon very soon. Maybe not next year, but I do think they will improve. But in like 2 or 3 years, they are going to be absolutely insane. I mean, Gauthier, Zegras, Leo Carlson, Mason McTavish, Zellweger, Mintyukov, they have so many young, talented prospects. And I think Gauthier next season, if they don't do the BS load management stuff with him, like, he is going to be a guy that gets top 6 minutes, gets good power play time, and is going to a team that is going to be better than last season. So I think there's a chance that Gauthier could have a 25-goal rookie season and maybe 50 to 55 points. Like, I do think there is the potential because that deployment is going to be there. Next up, I want to talk about Cole Perfetti. He's 22 years old. He was drafted 10th overall in the 2020 NHL entry draft. And I think that Cole Perfetti has a very bright future in the NHL. Now, listen, I understand that this season there's been some highs and definitely some lows. He's been scratched a handful of times, and I don't even know if he's going to play in the Stanley Cup playoffs against the Colorado Avalanche coming up in a couple of days here. You know, he started off extremely hot, and he cooled down, and then his minutes got slashed, and then he's been scratched a handful of times. So, not sure, you know, obviously that is kind of a concern, you know, if Bonus doesn't trust him. But regardless of all that stuff, I want to talk about his production. This is the type of production that you absolutely cannot ignore. 36 points in 70 games. That's a 82-game pace of 42 points. And he did this despite averaging 13 minutes and 22 seconds of ice time per game. Now, his production was definitely helped by power play time. He had 11 power play points. He He was 8th on the team in power play time. He got some, a decent amount of games on the first line power play. But regardless, guys, this is very impressive production. And I think if he could secure a top 6 role on the Jets and be on this first line power play, there's a chance that he can put up 60 points next season. Obviously, I'm going to do my breakout videos next season where we're going to have more information on what the team is going to do, because there is the question of who is going to center that second line. Right now, it's Sean Monahan, which is pushed Perfetti to the side. But if they don't resign Monahan, then that second line center spot is open. And I think that he's going to push to get that spot and potentially take a step up. We'll have to see what the Jets do. And if he does get that spot, like I said, there's a lot of potential. Next up, we have Adam Fantilli of the Columbus Blue Jackets. He's 19 years old. He was drafted 3rd overall in last year's NHL entry draft. And if it weren't for the draft class being so stacked, this guy is absolutely a #1 overall pick. Like, he has the stats to back it up. He has the size. He has the pedigree. I mean, if you're looking at his numbers in college, in his only year in college, the first year of college, 30 goals and 65 points in 36 games. That is absolutely elite. Now, if we're looking at his production as a rookie in the NHL, 27 points in 49 games, that's an 82-game pace of 20 goals and 45 points. I think that's pretty solid. I mean, 20 goals in your first year, especially considering his deployment. I think a lot of Columbus Blue Jackets fans and just fans of hockey were pretty frustrated with the deployment that he received. I mean, at times he wasn't getting the ice time that we needed him to get, a young player of his draft pedigree. So, 15 minutes and 42 seconds of ice time per game, that's okay. 2 minutes and 60 minutes of power play time per game, that's all right. 6 on the team. But in general, you want to see the type of numbers that we've seen from other prospects like Connor Bedard. You want to see Fantilli, especially with a team that's rebuilding and doesn't have that much talent on their team. Fantilli should be getting 18 minutes of ice time per game, and I think we're going to see that next season. I think there's a lot of potential, especially with his peripherals as well, right? In fantasy, if your league values peripheral shots, hits, and blocks, he takes a lot of shots. I mean, he had 115 shots in 49 games. That was pretty good. He put up 63 hits in 49 games too, so you're looking at 100 plus hits potentially as well. So huge fan of Fantilli for next season and many years to come after that. I wouldn't draft him too high, but as a late round flyer, this is a guy that has a potential to really help your team, especially in the fantasy playoffs next year. Next up, we have the guy that was taken ahead of Adam Fantilli, and that man is Leo Carlsson of the Anaheim Ducks. This was an interesting season for Leo Carlsson. He only played 54 games despite being healthy. They did what they called load management with Leo Carlsson, something that we really haven't seen in the NHL. This is something that we typically see in the NBA. So, didn't love that because I think it's pretty stupid, but that's what they did, and I don't expect them to do it next year. So next year he should play a full 82 games. But if we're looking at his production, 27 points in 54 games, that's a 41 82 game pace. The reason I'm a big fan of Leo Carlsson is that they know that he is going to be their first line center for many years to come. So next year, his deployment is locked, right? Similar to Slafkovsky, who has had all the opportunity this season, and that has allowed him to break out. I think Leo Carlsson is going to have the opportunity, and he's going to do the same. So 18 plus minutes, a staple on the first line power play, and the Ducks are going to be a better team. They have a lot of young talent, like I talked about in the Cutter Gauthier section. Gauthier, I think he's going to have a great rookie campaign. You have Mason McTavish, who's very talented, who's also on this list. You have some defensemen that are going to improve. Zegras is going to be healthy. They had a lot of injuries this year. We have to remember that as well. So I think a fully healthy Ducks team with all their young talent stepping up, the Ducks are going to look okay next year, and I think that's really going to help Carlsson's production. In terms of my prediction for Leo Carlsson, I think we're 2 or 3 years away from the Ducks being a wagon and also Carlsson being a force in fantasy hockey. But for next year, I think what's realistic is around 25 goals and around 50 to 60 points. So similar to the prediction that I have for Adam Fantilli. He's going to be solid in fantasy, especially in a deeper league, and I think you're going to be able to pick him up off the waiver wire. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing his development for next season and many years to come. Next up, we have one of the sneakiest breakout candidates for next season, and that is Jack Quinn of the Buffalo Sabre. Now with Jack Quinn, he looked very promising in the 2022-2023 season. He put up 37 points in 75 games with not a lot of minutes. I thought he was going to look very good this season that just ended, but unfortunately during offseason training, it might have been in July or August, he suffered an Achilles injury. He was out for 4 to 5 months, I believe, and he returned in January. So he was only able to play 27 games this year. But in those 27 games, he showed a lot of promise. I know it's a small sample size, but he put up 19 points in 27 games, and that is a 57-point pace. That's pretty impressive, guys. And Jack Quinn, if you watch some of the Buffalo Sabres games, he definitely passed the eye test. Again, I'll say that it's a very small sample size, so I don't want to get you guys too excited, but 57-point pace with an average of 15 minutes and 38 seconds of ice time per game. Those minutes aren't great, guys, especially power play time too. 9th on the team in power play time with 1 minute and 51 seconds of power play time per game. Imagine if Jack Quinn was in the top 6 getting, 17 to 18 minutes and also on the first line power play. What type of numbers could he put up then? Jack Quinn checks a lot of boxes for me. High draft capital, production despite limited ice time, and also he is going to be on a team where he should have plenty of opportunity next season. Now, obviously, I can't predict the lines of these Sabres for next season. We'll have to see what they do in the offseason, what's going to happen with Jeff Skinner, what's going to happen with Alex Tuch, who was in trade rumors earlier on this season. But in general, he's going to be in the top 6. He should get more minutes. And in terms of first line power play time, that's something I'm 50-50 on, right? If we're looking at, the first line power play right now, we have Alex Tuch, Zach Benson, JJ Peterka, Tage Thompson, and Rasmus Dahlin. Can Jack Quinn be on the first line power play over Zach Benson? I would hope so. I'm not sure which of these players, how they run their power play, who's net front, who's bumper, but I think Jack Quinn has the potential to be very good on the power play. So hopefully he can get that opportunity. And if he does, there is a potential that Jack Quinn can put up 30 plus goals next year. All right, let me tell you guys about one of my favorite sleepy breakout picks, similar to Jack Quinn. And that guy is Luke Evangelista of the Nashville Predators. Now, Luke Evangelista was in my breakout video that I made last year. I looked at his numbers. I saw what he was doing with his ice time, and I said, this guy could have potential. And this year, he showed even more. So let's break down his production. Let me tell you why I think there's a chance that he can put up 30 goals next year. This season, Evangelista, he played 80 games, put up 16 goals and 23 assists for a total of 39 points. And listen, I know that's nothing to write home about, but take a look at his ice time here. 13 minutes and 57 seconds of ice time per game. Guys, this is very good. This is very impressive, okay? And we've seen in the second half of the season him getting more ice time and him playing pretty darn good with that ice time. I think in a game about a week or two ago, he put up 10 shots in a game. Look at his shots, considering his ice time as well, right? 13 minutes and 57 seconds of ice time per game, like I told you. 172 shots. This guy has a sneaky shot. It's deadly. I'm telling you, this guy can fire the puck. And I think if he can get the opportunity next season, there is a lot of potential with Luke Evangelista. Now, I'm still trying to wrap my head around his ice time considering his production, but maybe he has some deficiencies on defense that he needs to work on. Either way, I think next season, he should be in the top 6. I mean, the Predators are not that deep, especially on right wing. So, you have Gustav Nyquist on the first line on the right wing, and then I think Luke Evangelista is going to be on the second line in that top 6. I mean, ideally, he would be on the first line with Philip Forsberg, but obviously Nyquist has played so good this season. So regardless, guys, top 6 minutes should be coming next season. And also, right now, he's on the first line power play. So I'm expecting him to be on the first line power play. He is shooting from distance, right? He's on the point right now. He looks very good on the first line power play. And I think if he can get top 6 minutes and on the first line power play, like I said, there is a potential for 30 goals in Evangelista's future and also 60 plus points. We'll have to see what happens, guys, especially if your league value shots too. 170 shots with this ice time. Like, just imagine what type of shots he could put up with adequate ice time. So very high in Evangelista. Please keep an eye on him for next year. Next up, we have Mason McTavish of the Anaheim Ducks. He was one of my favorite breakout centers going into the season, and I would say he had a pretty good year. I mean, 42 points in 64 games, 53.82 game pace. He definitely played better than the season prior, and I think if you're looking at the trend here, he's going to improve once again. We saw McTavish start off really hot. The Ducks, as a team, they started off really hot, and then obviously it was not sustainable, so they cooled down. But I think this production, considering the Ducks as a team, and also considering his ice time being only 16 minutes and 16 seconds of ice time per game, is pretty impressive. If this guy can get legit top 6 minutes, 17 to 18 minutes per game. The Ducks can improve as a team. Like I've said earlier on in this video, I think with all their young talent, they're going to improve. I think next year, McTavish could put up 65 to 70 points. We know McTavish, high draft capital, 3rd overall in the 2021 NHL entry draft. He was great at the World Juniors as well. He's a very talented guy, and I think he's going to be a legit threat in fantasy hockey in the next couple of years. So next year, I think he's going to make another improvement. 65 to 70 points is my prediction, and I'm excited to see what happens with the Ducks next season. Next up, we have Arizona Coyote center Logan Cooley, soon to be in Salt Lake City. This guy was drafted 3rd overall in the 2022 NHL entry draft, and this season he had a fantastic rookie campaign. As I'm recording this, the Coyotes are playing the Oilers, so I don't know what his full total will be, but through the 81 games that he's played so far this season, he put up 20 goals and 24 assists for a total of 44 points. This is a pretty impressive rookie season, especially considering that there were stretches where he didn't get a lot of ice time and he didn't get a lot of power play time. That happened and he did struggle, but he bounced back. And in the last month, he has been absolutely elite. I mean, take a look at these numbers. In the last 15 games, Logan Cooley's put up 9 goals and a total of 14 points. This could be the breakout that we're going to see continue going into next season. And there's a lot of things to like about Logan Cooley. I mean, obviously high draft capital, very talented player in college, but I think the opportunity on Arizona, now Salt Lake City, Utah, is there, right? He could potentially be centering that first line with Clayton Keller and Dylan Guenther potentially, or Nick Schmaltz. Either or is fine, but centering that first line with Clayton Keller could really catapult him. Even if he's in the top 6 and he's not centering that first line, it's fine, but I do think he's going to be on the first line next year, and he's going to be on the first line power play as well. Knowing that we're going to see his minutes increase, his deployment improve, and also him getting, a year under his belt, and just knowing how talented he is, I think that there is a potential that Logan Cooley puts up 60 to 70 points next year. Super excited to see what he does. I think he is such a talented player. This Coyotes team that has so much promise with all these young players. So yeah, definitely high on Logan Cooley, and we'll just have to see what happens next year. Next up, we have another Arizona Coyote forward, soon to be in Salt Lake City, like I said earlier, Dylan Guenther. This guy has been absolutely incredible this season. I mean, if he played a full season, he would not meet the conditions for this list because his 82 game pace is 60 plus points. In 44 games so far, as I'm recording this, there's 1 game remaining in the season against the Oilers. He has put up 17 goals and 16 assists for a total of 33 points. That is an 82 game pace of 61 points for the season. This is also a 31 goal pace for the season, guys. This is very impressive. Shooting percentage 14.4%, a little bit high, but not really. Like, that is perfectly sustainable for some players. So yeah, I am super high on Dylan Guenther for next year. Ice time this year, 16 minutes and 16 seconds of ice time per game. This production, considering that ice time, is extremely impressive, and we know that he is a staple on that first line power play. So yeah, there's not much else to be said, guys. Dylan Guenther, I think he can put up 30 goals next year, 60 to 70 points. This guy is going to be an absolute beast. And like I've said in the past, a future 40 goal scorer in the NHL. Next up, we have JJ Peterka of the Buffalo Sabres. I understand that he broke out this season, 28 goals in 82 games, very impressive. I talked about him in my last breakout video back in August, and I think that he is going to break out once again. The reason I'm such a big fan of JJ Peterka is because this season he had elite 5v5 production. If you're looking at his totals, right, 50 points in 82 games, only 7 of these points came from the man advantage. If we're looking at his goals per 60, even strength, he had better numbers than Kirill Kaprizov, William Nylander, Sebastian Aho, Brock Besser, etc. The list goes on, guys. And let's talk about his deployment, guys, because this will give you a very clear picture on why I think Peterka is going to break 30 goals next season and potentially 70 points. Like I told you earlier, Peterka's even strength numbers were extremely impressive, but he really didn't produce on the power play. Of his 50 points, he only put up 7 power play points, and the reason for this is because he did not see a lot of power play time. His average power play time per game was 1 minute and 55 seconds, which was 7th best on the Buffalo Sabres. Now, that isn't horrible, but the reason for this is because for the majority of the season, he was not on the first line power play. If we look at the last 13 games of the season, though, this will help you understand why I see so much potential for JJ Peterka. In the last 13 games of the season, JJ Peterka has been a staple on the first line power play, and he's also led the Buffalo Sabres in power play time per game. There are no injuries on the Buffalo Sabres. There are no major injuries that would give Peterka this deployment. No, he is being rewarded for his play. Obviously, this is great news. He's going to be on the first line power play next season, getting significant power play time. But what's even more impressive about his deployment in the last 13 games is his average ice time per game. This year, he has averaged 16 minutes and 23 seconds of ice time per game. That's solid, but it's not the best, right? The top line guys are getting 18 plus minutes. In the last 13 games, JJ Peterka has averaged 20 minutes and 29 seconds of ice time per game. Sorry, I misspoke, 20 minutes and 26 seconds. Either way, guys, he is leading all Buffalo Sabres forwards in ice time in the last 13 games. What does this say, guys? What does this say? The coaching, they trust him. He is going to be on the first line next year with Tage Thompson. He is going to be on the first line power play. And this guy has the potential to break 30 goals and 70 points next season. The number one player on this list is none other than Juraj Slafkovsky of the Montreal Canadiens. Now, I will admit, I was not very high on Slafkovsky going into this most recent season. I wasn't impressed with how he looked out there. I wasn't impressed with his numbers, but he has proven me wrong, and I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. I think Slafkovsky is going to have a monster year, and let me tell you why. Slafkovsky just made the conditions of this video, putting up 20 goals and 30 assists for a total of 50 points in 82 games. This was a significant increase on his totals last year. I mean, last year he had 10 points in 39 games. Very, very bad season for Slafkovsky. But this season, we've seen bumps in ice time. We've seen him be a staple on the first line and the first line power play. And he has absolutely taken advantage of these new opportunities. The one thing that you guys need to understand with Slafkovsky, and this one thing is the reason why I'm so high in him, is that this production did not start until he got this deployment. Did not start until the second half of the season. If we're looking at the last 51 games for Juraj Slafkovsky, he put up 18 goals and 42 points. So of his 50 points, 42 of them came in the last 51 games. If we're looking at this production, if he can keep up this type of production, and that's a pretty decent sample size going into next year, there is a potential for him to put up 70 plus points. And listen, I'm not going to say he's going to put up more than 70 points, but I think 70 points is a very realistic prediction for Slafkovsky, right? The deployment is absolutely secure. He's going to be on the first line with Suzuki and Caulfield, both very talented players that are likely going to put up 70 plus points as well. He is going to be a staple on the first line power play, a power play that could improve maybe with the infusion of Lane Hudson and just these young players getting better, right? Slafkovsky is going to improve because he's a young player. Like, this guy's only 20 years old. He could take another leap forward. And with this opportunity, with this deployment, with the production that we have seen in the second half of this most recent season, the sky is the limit for Juraj Slafkovsky. The last thing that I wanted to mention with Slafkovsky is that if you're in a league that counts hits, that is another added bonus. He put up 151 hits last year, so take that into consideration if you're in a league that counts those. In conclusion, super high on Slafkovsky. I'm super excited to see what he can do and to prove all the naysayers wrong, like myself. And hopefully he can put up 70 points this year and potentially lead the Montreal Canadiens to the playoffs in the next couple of years. All right, guys, that is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. We have one more video that is coming probably in the next week or so. It's actually my birthday today as I'm recording this. So wish me a happy birthday. Thank you so much. Like the video, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I will catch you in the next one.